The Newsfeed PM continues now here to unpack with us patterns that have been revealed by the recently released crime statistics. I'm now joined by criminal law expert Ian Allis. Ian, good to have you. Thank you very much for your time. 7,000 people, at least or so, would have been murdered in the reporting period, as articulated by the numbers given by the police minister yesterday. So murder still becomes a huge sticking point. The minister saying all parties involved must sit around the table and really deliberate on this particular issue. Others have pointed out the proliferation of firearms at the hands of civilians. Is there a correlation, in your view, between the availability of firearms and crimes committed using firearms?
Good afternoon, Thabo, and good afternoon to the viewers. That's been a widely spread, almost urban legend type of assessment of the more firearms you have, the higher the rate of crime. That's not correct. It doesn't in actual fact correlate, because in reality, the firearms that are being used in criminal activities are not actually legitimate and legal firearms. So it makes absolutely no difference from that perspective as to the availability of the firearms. These are not procured in legitimate ways. They're not firearms that are obtained through competency certificates and with clearance certificates. These are illegal firearms in 90% of the cases, and in certain of them they even come from the police stations themselves that are robbed. So there's no correlation whatsoever, and there'll never be a true gun-free society. So from that perspective, the legal firearm industry is not the one to actually blame in this one. This is the unlawful trafficking of and unlawful firearms that are coming in and being stolen from people. So it's really not an indication from that aspect.
So from your analysis, the biggest risk factor, you attribute that to illegal firearms which are available in South Africa. Are we at a point where we could say with some degree of certainty that we could see anytime soon, even in the foreseeable future, a reduction in that access to that kind of arsenal?
There's already been a great deal of access to legal firearms, but for illegal firearms, it's hardly going to be an effect, and especially the manners in which these are procured. Because a lot of these firearms, yes, I'm not saying all the crimes are committed using illegal firearms, but the great majority on the organized crime with regards to your gang violence murders, your cash and transit house related murders, those type of high-end crimes and the breaking and entering, the aggravated assaults, those are primarily procured from that. And unless they start cracking down on the illegal firearms trade, there's not going to be a reduction.
So in other parts of the world, they would say an increase in wealth makes people have more access to guns as more people buy more weapons. In South Africa, it doesn't seem to work that way. It seems, the poorer people are, we are seeing a rise in criminal activity relating to firearms.
Correct, because that's exactly where the problem comes. It's not your day-to-day citizens and your lawful citizens. Yes, there are certain incidents. We can see that with the increase in gender-based violence and domestic violence and those type of issues. And yes, there does involve a lot of legal firearms when one deals with certain of those crimes. But as far as our other higher murder rates, because of those being associated with other crimes, those are where the illegal firearms are coming, and that's why, especially with gang violence, it is the poorer who are getting the access, because they're the ones who are being prejudiced by being placed in those predicaments.
Now, frankly speaking, for many people, this spells the state's inability to secure individuals, to secure communities. Would that be correct to put that blame squarely on the foot of the state, or is there something else that needs to be done?
The factor is the ineptitude of the state and the lack of resources of the state is about 90% of the problem. Some people are just born bad, and and the problem comes is that certain of these guards and certain of these type of operational criminals will always find a way to cover themselves, where the best of the police we see this from not just in South Africa. This is a worldwide phenomenon of kingpins and organized crime syndicates. Work with reckless abandon, and they've been able to defeat certain police forces that are far stronger than the South African police forces and more well resourced. So, but unfortunately, in our current climate and looking at the vast majority of the crime, it is permissible because of a lack of an improperly resourced and sometimes often an incompetent policing force, and one that's not aware of how the law needs to be utilized.
Yeah. So in your experience, if I'm hearing you properly, you're saying that in countries where the capacity of the police force has been increased, there was a direct outcome of public safety.
There has been increase where there is a properly trained. It's not capacity just by virtue of number, and that's the thing. You can have 4 million police officers, but if they're not trained and not resourced, then you've got nothing more than glorified doormen. They need to be properly resourced, and that is where the better. The better police forces have been more successful in deterring crime because of their investigation systems, their resources at play, their national intelligence. And unfortunately, what primarily impedes South Africa is the high level of corruption stemming within the policing sector.
So are police being, and I mean, in terms of the training that they receiving training that is below par compared to what police are getting as training elsewhere in the world?
Training is one aspect. Resources is another, and money for that training. There's been recent snippets that have been released of more recent graduates from the police academies as well. There's an innate lack of discipline, and when you have a lack of discipline in your police force, you're going to have a lack of capacity, capability, as well as integrity. Those are factors. A well-disciplined police force is a stronger police force and a less corrupt police force.
Yeah, is that relying on political leadership?
Partially, yes, but also partially our criteria for looking at police officials and looking to recruit new members of the police force are not exactly top standard. How many times, and there's been a massive controversy relating to the number of academy trainees who have got criminal records, who have actually been convicted and imprisoned and are illegal and not even South African, which is already a major problem.
Let's get back then to the proliferation, I beg your pardon, of illegal firearms. What are the causes of having such weapons being easily available, and what class of weapons are we talking about here that we would have to deal with?
Let me put it in this way. If you or I were to go into a gun store, and this is where it's the easiest assessment, and we have to go ahead and apply to have a gun license. We have to do competencies, we have to write exams, we have to submit it to the police for clearance, and usually, at best, you'll get a handgun, a revolver, maybe at the level of a shotgun, and security firms higher level. We're talking about individuals who are walking around with fully automatic firearms, Uzis, AR rifles, R5s, AK-47s. That's not available to the public. So realistically, these are coming from somewhere. It's either illegal or it's stolen. Either which way, it's not being procured through any necessary processes, and it's not traceable.
So what you have here is demand coupled with those who are willing to supply these. And how do you cut the supply? Because I suppose the demand in this case is already there.
Basic economics says it's all about demand and supply. In a situation like this, that's coming through organized channels. That is where your national intelligence should, in fact, be operating at its best. Unfortunately, South Africa has become a gateway to corruption. They see the state this is a lawless state, and a country that basically, if you pay enough, you'll get away with anything. Until such time as our policing becomes more effective and we also start looking at a proper witness type of protection program, and people being protected when they are aware of these type of details and being given proper deals, not out of political and not for political reasons, that is when there will start being a better crackdown of these organized crime networks.
Ian Allis, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for coming on. Criminal law
Thank you,
expert Ian Allis, assisting us to make sense of what needs to be done, certainly low-hanging fruits. She says dealing with illegal firearms, but better training and better resourcing of our police forces.